Chief Gallagher, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight about our proposed fiscal year 21 operating budget. I believe you have copies in front of you. There's not much of a change in our operating budget for next year as in comparison to our operating budget of the current year. You'll see that there is a 6.6% increase in salaries. 6.5, I'm sorry. Those are contractual. We are in the second year of a 3-year contract with now 8 full-time members. And then we built in the contractual increase for the fire chief and the 2% for the non-union or managerial personnel. The salary line item reflects full funding for 8 full-time members. If you remember, previous to the complete merge of fire and EMS, which took effect in July, we had 4 full-time personnel on the EMS side. We had funding for 4, but only 3 bodies in the fire department. We never took the salary out when we had our 4th firefighter retire several years ago. We've hired. That employee is now in on step 1 of the contract. We've calculated the numbers. So the request that you see there is for full funding, stipends, holidays, all contractual requirements for the 8 full-time employees. Working down our expense category, you see a slight increase of $500 in clothing allowance. Again, we have contractual obligation to the new hire. A $250 increase to building and grounds to cover the expenses of all 3 stations. We ran low last year, and we're putting effort into making sure Station 2 on Main Street stays as well kept as the other 2 manned stations, staff stations, I should say. We saw some contractual increases in some of the services that we purchase. Our software dues has increased by will increase by $500, and that's again for our ambulance billing. An increase in medical supplies. Our calls are on the rebound. That's our challenge to handle for you folks. The revenue that we've received fiscal year to date is ahead of where we were last fiscal year. So we are significantly more busy than we were the previous year. But with that comes increase in expendable supplies. Dues and subscriptions increasing by $500 also. That's to make sure we have full funding for the exhaust cleaning system that we have in the 2 staff stations. That's attached to the apparatus. It extracts the exhaust fumes before they fill the building. We've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for that in the last couple of contracts, and just decided to add the full cost of that service to dues and subscriptions. And then we ran short also in vehicle and equipment for our annual pump testing. All of our ladders and pumps and vehicles are tested and certified each year. But again, towards the end of the fiscal year, we're scrambling to make sure we have enough to cover the cost of pump testing. This will ensure that. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the walkthrough of the changes. Otherwise, all the other operating expenses are level funded. The total combined budget for this request, the expense increase, 6.5% was the request for the increase in salaries, 2.4% in operating expenses, for a 5.8% increase overall. It would bring our budget to $1,079,305 for the next fiscal year.
Chief, a question on the staffing positions. Have you been able to get a second in command in place?
I'm not requesting that yet. We just brought the 8th full-time firefighter on. I'm going to need I talked with the union, and there wasn't any opposition from them to take fiscal year '21 and let the dust settle as far as salaries and overtime. I cannot tell you that the amount that we're requesting for overtime is going to cover it. We've been filling that fourth firefighter slot for several years, draining the overtime account, draining the call salary account. Now that we have it budgeted for a full fiscal year, let's let it play itself out so that next year I can come to you and with certainty say this is what our true overtime expense should be, or at least ballpark. So, not for fiscal year '21, but I'd like to place a place marker to have this discussion next year.
Quick question, Chief. Was it tanker 2 was leaking? Has that been
All
resolved?
fixed. Yep.
Okay, was that?
We were able to get the article at last meeting, all the articles, I'd like to talk about our article requests in a minute, but last year, there was funding specifically to Tanker 1. That was repaired. It's operating fine. It still is kind of low mileage and not a lot of wear and tear, so we're gonna get some additional life out of that.
That's the newer tanker?
It's not the newer tanker, no, it's the oldest piece of apparatus we have, but it's also the least utilized. It doesn't roll on every
That's the
call.
one that was leaking?
That was the one that was leaking
Okay.
from the water tank, yep. But we're able to find a welder that was able to diagnose it and get in there and repair it. So that's in great shape. We requested last year $25,000 from the Solar Capital Fund to service all of our engines, and we've done that, except for 2 that I want to talk to you about for an article request. But that was probably one of the best projects that we've taken on, because there was more that needed to be repaired than we realized. We didn't get to all of the apparatus with that request. That's why I'm coming back again this year to the same funding source. But when we wrap that up, every one of our engines will have been gone through from nose to tail.
What do they do? What were
Refurbished.
they doing to them?
There's the silver, bronze, gold, platinum servicing.
Yeah.
So they go through and all the fluids, all the hoses, belts, everything gets replaced and repaired, replaced and refilled, greased, steam cleaned, what you would expect for a heavy piece of equipment servicing.
Right.
At the same time, they go through and they see what's wrong, what's not working, what switch, what wire, the pump leaking, things of that sort. They give us a quote, and then we'd have those repairs completed. So we refurbished the tanker, engine 1, finished the ladder. There was some repairs on the ladder that needed to be done. Engine 5, we were able to get it serviced, but now there's a repair list that we just don't have the funding left
Right.
for. That would be picked up with the article from next year. And then Squad 2, which is the newest of the pumpers that we have, would also go out for the same process.
And repair list, anything serious?
No, there was an air dryer that wasn't allowing the brakes to unlock. We fixed that. We dedicated the funds to taking care. We asked them to prioritize that repair list. Stuff that needed to be done now, the stuff that can wait till July. So we have a list. It's probably about $12,000 for engine 5 to get that completely refurbished. But that would be through the article request that I want to talk to you about next. So we got a good plan, and we're investing money. It's coming from the Solar Capital Fund, and it's extending the useful life of the apparatus. So it's a great benefit to the department and the taxpayers.
Sure, thank you.
Have you seen an increase of calls for service over the past year, both in the EMS side and on the fire side?
Yes, we closed last year with a little over 1,200 calls combined. We're tracking them combined now, and we're able to break out still 75% EMS related, but the total call volume is over previous years. So we're getting busy. We turned mutual aid to New Bedford on, medical mutual aid, during Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So the folks are going into the city more often. That's based on our staffing level. We want to make sure we always have a paramedic in town before we send the crew out of town. So that's generated some additional costs too, but at the same time, it generates additional revenue. Okay?
Any other questions for the chief?
Want to walk through the articles?
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So, for the very first time in my career, my 17-year career as a department head, I have to come to you in town meeting and ask for funds to pay bill from the previous year, and I'm embarrassed by that. Fortunately, it's to our guys, and they're not crazy vendors that are banging on the door. They covered the cost of their textbooks and software for their training. The town reimbursed them at the end of their training. Unfortunately, that came at the end of, into this fiscal year, so we didn't have the funding left to be able to pay that. So I'm requesting $465 to pay those 3 firefighters who have been carrying this bill without complaint, by the way, for over a year. I spoke already about finishing up the refurbishing of the engines, $35,000 from the solar capital account. That will allow us to get that $12,000 list of repairs for engine 5 completed, and then at the same time get engine squad 2 out to be serviced, looked at, and take care of whatever repairs present themselves at that time. We also have an interesting request that's contractual, and I talked with Ms. Hebert, and we're of the opinion that we'll request the full funding. This is coming from EMS revenue. In the contract, the new hire, again, we wanted to promote from within, so we're looking at call firefighters to take the full-time position. That's why we got out of civil service, so that we could grab our own personnel instead of going out of town. And if it was a EMT basic, that we would assume the cost of training them to the paramedic level. But we're simply not going to pay the $10,000 tuition and wish them well. The contract sets out certain steps. So upon acceptance into training, the employee would be reimbursed $1,000. They would pay up front. The employee would be refunded, reimbursed $1,000 upon acceptance. Year and a half, 2 years later, when they're certified, they would get $3,000. $3,000 again after 1 year of certification, and then $3,000 after 3 years of certification. So the town is investing the money to a full-time EMT basic to get them to be a paramedic, which is the level that we want them to be. And we're going to reimburse them for that, but it's going to require a 3-year, at least a 3-year commitment on their part to leave. Now, I'll tell you, we've been blessed. We've never had a full-time member quit. So the guys don't, and gals, don't walk away from these jobs. So there's no question in my mind of their loyalty to the department and their interest in staying, but we wanted to make sure that we had that structure in there, that we were kind of protecting the interests of the taxpayer as well. So that's a $10,000 request coming from EMS revenue. The roof at station, the next two are somewhat tied together. The roof at Station 3, 60 Middle Road, needs to be replaced. Mr. Merritt and I have been in conversation about this for a while. Ms. Hebert found from a October 2009 special town meeting, there was an article for $50,000 for the repair of Station 1 roof. That was in preparation for the solar panels. We didn't use all of that. There's $15,970 left in that article. We need funding to replace the Station 3 roof, so we're going to ask you to consider reappropriating the balance in that old article of $15,970 for the purpose of replacing the roof at Station 3. So it's not an increase. It's funds that have already been appropriated by the town. It's just reappropriating for the same purpose, but just a different building.
Wording was such that you can't just...
Yeah, it's specified Fire Station 1 in the article, so, yeah, I know.
And then I wanted to just briefly talk to you about a concept.
Chief, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Is that going to be enough money?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, according to Mr. Merritt.
Okay.
Kind of is our appraiser for all things construction. The other project that I kind of want to talk to you about in general and get some direction, the energy costs at Station 3, 60 Middle Road, is high. And we've been looking for ways of bringing that down. Through the Green Communities Act, Mr. Merritt's been able to get blown-in insulation in the attic, which we never had before. We have all the new LED lighting. So we're attempting to make the building more efficient, but we're still spending a considerable amount of money on energy. Last fiscal year, last fiscal year, $6,119 in energy costs for that building. Year to date, and this was as of the end of January, for the current fiscal year, we're already at $3,379. So it'll be in excess of $6,000 again. So it's a high energy consuming building. So, you may have noticed, driving down Alden Road near Alden Court, a kind of funky looking solar array. And this is called a smart flower, because it looks like a flower. It folds down upon itself. When the sun comes out, the 12 panels are moved. They form the shape of a flower, and then during the course of the day, a motor allows it to follow the course of the sun, which increases efficiency by 40% for that type of solar panel, as opposed to putting it on the roof, is able to follow the sun. I'm looking at that because of our electricity consumption. We range from a high in 2016 of 42,000 kilowatt hours used in that building. Last year, it was 37,000 if we rounded up kilowatt hours. So anything we can do to bring that usage down. We're trying. We've got the LED lights. We've got the sensors to turn the lights off when guys come in and out of the rooms. But we're still consuming a lot of energy and money. So my thought is anything we can get to offset the cost, similar to what we did at Station 1 with the roof panels. That was one of the pre-recession 2008, I believe it was, shovel-ready projects when the federal government was looking to spend money to jumpstart the economy. Mr. Young had that project in his back pocket. The funding became available. He threw it down on the table and they funded it. So there was no cost. Correct, Henry? There was no cost to the town. But that saved us a considerable amount of money on energy, and it offsets the cost to this building for the amount that we don't use when it's being generated. So I'm exploring this option. This sunflower can produce 4,000 to 6,000 kilowatt hours per year. A drop in the bucket compared to the 40,000 or so that we use yearly, but it's a beginning, and it's a step in the right direction. They are expensive. They're $37,000 complete. That's for the purchase of it, the installation, I believe a couple of years of warranties and a year of maintenance, and it can be installed, they say, in a day. I would not bring this to your attention at with a $37,000 price tag. These are eligible for considerable rebates through the state and the federal government. As a matter of fact, Eversource has a program that would fund rebate up to 90% of qualifying projects. Not to say that the full the 37,000 would be covered by the 90% rebate, but it's a very good program. We've been encouraged to take advantage of it. So tomorrow, their consultant is coming in to take a look at Station 3 to do an energy audit to see if we would qualify for that rebate. So knowing what we've done and the money we've invested, we're pretty sure that we've checked off all of the energy efficiency steps that we would need. So I'm pretty confident that the audit results will come out favorably. But what I would like to talk about is the possibility of getting an article contingent on rebate confirmation for out of the solar capital fund. So in talking with Ms. Hebert, it kind of makes logical sense that if the large solar fields are contributing funds to an account for us for capital outlay, the purchase of a solar array that's going to provide relief to our operating budget each year is a pretty good investment. So, or let's pump the brakes on this. The other option would be to get the roof fixed this year and investigate and look at the much more expensive roof system that, while it's more expensive, would generate more kilowatt hours. So it's, at this point, Mr. Chairman, simply looking to try to rein in some of our operating costs in a sustainable way. Solar seems to be the way to go. It's a wonderful sunny stretch over there on Middle Road. And again, would all be contingent on getting a significant rebate and not paying the full price.
Do you attribute the energy cost to anything specific? I mean, it's not electric heat in that building, is it?
No. That building has always been problematic. And my understanding when it was designed, that there was some consideration given to, the building truly is a garage with a living area attached.
Right.
But I don't think when it was designed that way. It was designed with a higher level of healthcare focus. So there's almost like a positive pressure inside the building. The HVAC system is a big drain on our energy bills. Yeah. So down the road, it might be worth a conversation about gutting that and redoing that. That would be a huge.
How many firefighters do you have there versus your other station?
2 around the clock.
There's just 2 down
Two
there.
around the clock on Middle Road.
The savings in energy, you said, is 6 or 7, you said megawatts?
4 to 6
Or
kilowatt.
kilowatts,
Yep.
kilowatts. What does that relate to in a yearly energy savings?
I think we crunched the numbers and we thought it would be about $1,000 a year.
1,000 a year, so, if you want a 5-year ROI, you need to bring 37,000 down to 5.
Right. But if we get a significant rebate, we're looking at the return on investment on the actual cost minus the rebate.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, 37 is...
Right. That's why I'm
but
saying
if
I
you
would
need-
advance this if it was
yeah.
just going to be $37,000. That
Yeah.
seems like an awful lot of money for 4 to 6,000 kilowatts.
Expensive flower.
Yeah.
Very expensive flower.
But even if you got the 90%, that's almost $4,000. It's a 4-year ROI.
4 years.
I just was on to understand.
Yeah. So we'll continue this. Maybe we can just bookmark this for now and let you deliberate on it. But just know that we're trying to look to rein in some of these costs. I was looking this morning at the meter at Station 1, and it was generating and pushing electricity out on the grid. So, and it's February. We won't have an electric bill there until November now. So that's just been a tremendous system and a good cost saver for us in that building. But now, Station 2, the heat is set at 52 degrees. The lights are only on when the guys go in to pick up a truck. Minimal cost to operate that station. But Station 3's been a bear. So we're looking to try to do something sustainable to save some money over the years. Okay?
Questions, Chief?
Very good.
Wow.
Told you, easy year this year.
All right, Chief,
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief.
Just until I start, just make sure that.
Can I add? I know a lot of the departments are going to present their capital articles requests. So just in general, to let you all know that obviously the Board of Selectmen haven't reviewed any of those yet. So, once they go through it, we'll get you an updated list of the totals. But while the departments are here, it makes sense for them to at least present to you what they're looking at.
All right. Next item we have this evening is the golf department. Dana, and Mr. Tibbles.
Yes.
Good evening, Dana,
Good
welcome.
evening. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to review our budget request. I'll review some of the things in regards to any maintenance specifics, questions. I'll let Steve speak to the details on those. Page 1 is the salaries page, along with the reserve for unforeseen expenses. And again, we're requesting that there in case we do have a need for equipment replacement should something fail. The lawnmowers that we have, we're not doing the buy new fleet program that we have done in the past. We're kind of repairing what we have and extending the life as far as we can, so we decided to put that in place in case one of the mowers go down. Steve, what a new mower would go for if one crashed would be roughly what?
Depending on what it is, anywhere from 30,000 to 70,000.
So we put that there just in case in the heat of the season, we've got sunshine, plays at a maximum, a mower goes down, we need to be cutting Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and then the greens every day, so everything has to be up to speed, and so that's why we
It would
request
cover
that.
other things too. I mean, the more significant thing there is any significant vandalism which would cause us to take a green or something out of play, which we
Sure.
have to get fixed immediately. Another thing that is just as important as equipment is pumps.
Right.
And pump, we have two 40-horse pumps and another smaller jockey pump. And any of those, two 60-horse pumps, if any of those needed to be replaced, it could be something that we could call and have done the next day as opposed to have to wait and go through the process. And, normally that happens in the middle of July when it's 95 degrees and humid, so it doesn't happen in April when when you can take a few extra weeks to get something done.
Were those pumps upgraded just past couple of years?
Yes, pump station was done 3 years ago, I believe, if my memory serves me right. And which, by the way, was a significantly good investment at the time. And there's no real wood around here, it's all fake, but knock on wood, it's been running like a clock. And really has made a significant difference in electricity use in the pump house, also water distribution and pressure at the nozzle, which we were having problems with in the past.
So again, that money is there requested as a safety. We are under the understanding that, we're not using it for anything outside of, an absolute necessity. Moving down into the salaries, submitted is the standard 2% COLA across the board. And then if there aren't any questions on that.
We did have a wage and, I don't know, what is it called?
Wage and
classification.
Wage and classification in place for hourly wage employees. That 2% is somewhat misleading in that particular category because we were basically given a 2% increase in the expense from 2020 to 2021, but the difference is in how the hourly wage increase affects, because the hourly wage increase goes into effect the first of the year to be closer in proximity to how the state chooses to raise the minimum wage, because for a significant amount of time we were below minimum wage. And we're not significantly above it comparatively, but what we end up having to do at times is to adjust the time in which a significant number of staff come back or the time in which we're laid off, so we can fit within that 2%. We don't have stipends, we don't have overtime budgeted, so we have to utilize that type of calculation to keep ourselves within the 2% at that particular line item for staffing. In both cases, both for Dana's folks and the folks that work on our staffs as well.
We have reviewed this also with the golf committee, and as everybody knows, with the state, with the minimum wage, that number exceeds 2%, and at some point, this is going to become more of an issue. Right now, we're kind of managing within the budget, like Steve said, and making it fit, but at some point, it's going to be, might be a bigger issue than it is currently. So we'll address that when we get there at that point. I don't know if there aren't any questions regarding any of those. Moving into the next page, that starts with page 46, fringe benefits. If you go down, there's an increase in maintenance R&M equipment, 12%, maintenance rentals and leases, trash removal, and then a reduction in R&M irrigation. As far as the trash removal, somehow we weren't included on the town's trash contract, so we had to go out and seek our own removal service. So therefore, that is why we're putting at $5,000. That's a rough estimate of where we believe it's going to fall. Might be less than that, might be more than that, but we're kind of gauging it to be around $5,000, and then we'll modify that in the upcoming seasons as needed. With regards to the changes in rentals and leases,
Well, we have two there, actually. The equipment maintenance expense, we have, as the chief alluded to in his situation, we have a significant amount of older equipment. Most of it's on, 13 years and above. And the problem that we're starting to run into when we got away from a 5-year equipment replacement program is the fact that the repairs that you're having to do normally during that 5-year period are simple things. Routine maintenance, bed knives, reels, grease fittings, occasional hydraulic hoses, and so on. Now we're running into engine problems, we're running into radiator replacements, we're running into hydraulic system hose replacements. And right now, we're looking at a number at $28,000 for the request in FY21. Right now, for FY 2020, I'm about $30,000. And I'm predicting, we're starting to move into individual equipment replacement, and I'm basically keeping my fingers crossed that I can keep this stuff running, especially when you get up around 6,000 and 7,000 and 8,000 hours, 6,000 hours on a piece of equipment. That basically equates to 360,000 miles on a car. So it's getting, and it's just simply metal wears out. And when you're cutting at the heights that we're cutting at, if you have a significant amount of wear in a lift and lowering arm, it's going to drastically influence your height of cut when you're cutting below 1/8 of an inch. So we have some issues there, we're dealing with them. Hopefully, we've put together an equipment replacement program that we hope will take care of those needs. And I've actually started moving towards, in the past we were forced to buy, for lack of a better word, economy equipment because we couldn't afford the top line mowers because we couldn't get as much for our dollar. Now with a somewhat different approach, we're going to start buying top line equipment primarily with diesel engines, which are going to last longer and enable us to go past this 5-year window. Most of the equipment companies now are recommending a 3 and 4, and it's sometimes a 5-year equipment replacement window, just so you're not running into those major costs, and you can keep these annual costs down to where we were in the past of around $13,000 to $15,000. And our rentals and leases, what we did in that particular category is we took some items that were in other categories that weren't necessarily appropriate expenses there. For instance, in our irrigation account, we had an $860 annual bill for rental of a compressor to blow out the irrigation system. Yes, it is part of the irrigation system maintenance, but it isn't actually a part or repair, and it was taking a significant amount of money out of the little that we had for irrigation repairs. We can't, to buy at $312 a head, 10 heads for replacement blows our irrigation budget out of the water. And the golf course is approximately 20 years old, and all the nozzles on all your heads are plastic. And the water's been running through those at 115 PSI for 20 years, and they're worn out. And when they wear, you don't get the proper throw. And even replacing the nozzles, they're $5 a piece front and back, so it's $10 a head. So if you go across 18 greens at approximately four heads of green, 32, 72, that's over $700 just to replace a nozzle, whereas we're looking to try to keep the irrigation system operating its appropriate capacity without going out and doing thorough replacements. But we should be replacing heads. They even now have heads that you replace, and if you have a problem with the internal of the head, you can do all of that without digging the head up. You can simply do it in the canister, whereas if we have a problem with one of our heads, we have to shut 2/3 of a hole or 2/3 of the system off, drain the line, pull the head out, repair it, put it back in, then charge that portion of the system back up. So it would behoove us in the future to be able to replace these heads. So we've taken some costs in areas that were really more rental costs, but were in line item expenses for parts and repairs, and moved them. We have part of that rental expense is our equipment repair maintenance software, as well as our staff assigning software that was taken out of the other areas that was put into that area. So it looks like there's a significant increase there, but basically we took expenses from other areas and put them in that one line item.
So over the course of 20 years of running a golf course, Steve and I mean, we try to counterbalance within the budget to offset any increases where we can and fine-tune the budget to meet exactly what it is the expenses are over these processes. So we've done the same thing with regards to advertising. We reduced it, increased Pro Shop. Rounds are up. If you check back to FY 18 and 19, we did 15,871, then 19,000. 20, we did 15,000. If your rounds are up, you're going to get halo sales, and you have to have those products, obviously, to supply demand. So as we need the equipment and everything to function properly, that is one demand. The other demand is satisfying your customer in front of you. They're going to want to eat, so you need to have the right amount in the food, and then you need to have proper supplies, so when they come, there's impulse sales. I forgot my hat, forgot my shoes, I need balls. I lost 13 balls in the water, I need some more. You know, you have to have enough resources to satisfy those needs. And fortunately for us, it appears that adding monies to those line items is a good thing, because business is going in the right direction. So we do try to offset and counterbalance some of these expenses as we move down throughout the line items. So that was advertising and Pro Shop supplies. Minor increase in credit card fees. Again, those go up. I mean, it's a necessary evil. You got to pay them. They're using their credit cards. That's a good thing.
That was one question I had for Julie and you folks here. I don't know if it's really an appropriate question, but I've noticed going through other places in town where people choose to use a credit card, there's a little sign there that says if you use your credit card, you're going to be charged an additional $1. It might not, this $28,000 that we pay in credit card fees.
I think we've reviewed this in the past with
We can't do that?
With municipality, you're not allowed to add an additional $1 charge to use your credit card.
Well, how come there's a sign in the collector's office right there on the counter? If you choose to use your credit card, it's going to cost you $1 more. That's the municipality, right?
Yeah, I don't know the
I didn't
answer
see
to
that
that.
sign. I thought that was the response that I received when we pursued.
We can't do that?
In the number of,
I don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming that you can't, I mean, I know,
I don't know, I thought
typically
some people here might know that. They may have businesses of their own and might have information.
even for the town, on the online bill pay, there's, the, whatever fee is, if you use a card or even if you use like a check there are different fees depending on
I know
what
if
you have.
my hometown, if I paid my
Yeah.
excise tax bill to credit,
I think the way it had been set up was due to the vendor that you guys used. So that's credit card charges, but also the gift card
even
charges.
if we could cut it by
Yeah?
5%.
Mhm.
Well-
I mean, because our budget doesn't go up on an
Mhm.
annual basis. We have to stay within, what's the rule? We have to stay within the revenue we make in the previous year or something.
Well, you have to
Correct.
stay within your appropriation as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's not a fund of money to pull from, so if
Right.
we could save anywhere else in here, it would be
Yeah.
better.
So the credit union department, in the years past, they've always been proactive pretty much in addressing, trying to get a reduced rate, and I think we actually recently got one maybe 2 years ago
Yeah.
through credit card negotiations.
Mhm.
I mean, it's, obviously it's one thing to keep an eye on, but they're not gonna reduce credit card charges every year for us, it's just not gonna, it's not
Right.
feasible.
You guys use credit cards for food and?
We do allow it. The credit card machine is in the pro shop. The food is on the other side
So
of
you may be able
the
to
trailer.
split it up that way and use, charge a fee for
Possibly.
credit card use of rounds versus or merchandise. I really don't know.
I just thought, I mean,
The big ticket item where we see most credit card charges is with our season passes. It's similar to memberships for private country clubs, but it's a per round package that, you know, predetermined rounds, 20, 40, and 60 rounds. And the majority of people that come in that purchase those use their credit cards because they don't walk around with that kind of cash on them. So, I mean, it benefits us because when you get that customer, you know that they're committed to you for the season. If you get 40 rounds, there's 40 weeks in the summer, you're gonna see these guys once a week.
Yeah, you gotta be careful of that, because you don't wanna pick off your customer.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And to have a loyal customer, and he or she gets in the habit of every year in March or April or whenever they decide to do it, however their rounds run out, because we set it determined on I mean, you can use them.
Do you know if other golf courses in the area do that? Do they charge a 1% on credit card bills?
I'm not sure.
I mean, that would be
I could check
something.
other municipalities and see what they do.
Yeah, I like that. I think part of the fee is also our fee for using the software and equipment that we have for the credit cards too,
Mhm.
and the gift cards. I
Yeah,
think
and there is a
I mean,
support
I don't-
feature too, it's 24-hour support. So if the machine goes down, you call the 1-800 number and there's somebody that picks up the phone, because again, if the leagues are there and I got 130 guys to get out and there's a glitch in the software, I need
Set up a
support.
PayPal account.
Yeah.
No charge.
But we can definitely look into it and make sure
I
that
just
we're
want,
taking
because the
advantage.
town
Yeah.
takes credit cards for bills to be paid, correct? So they must
Yeah.
have a certain company they call on with software. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just like the trash deal. I don't know how we got left out,
Yeah.
but it's gonna push me over budget in my energy account because I already had to spend over $1,000 for waste management for a month.
Mhm.
So if there was something else like that that we, by reducing costs, could co-join, be a part of, it would help out here.
Yeah.
And it would, then we could all be on the same page and we would know if we could do that type of thing.
Are these cost increases just because of rate increases, or is this reflective because you're selling more, you have more rounds, you have more volume coming in?
Which particular,
Yeah,
Credit card
that's
fees.
what-
credit card?
Yeah, I mean, is it reflective of a rate increase?
I think
or
it's
is it just
volume.
because- Well, then, I guess I'm not following you completely, because if you're getting more volume, you're getting more revenue as well, so.
Correct.
The margin's the same.
Yeah, but it's still, I don't know I don't know how credit card fees are charged. Is it, I mean, is it $1 every time somebody uses a
I
credit
think
card?
it's a percentage.
It's a percentage.
Normally,
So-
there's a minimum
Oh, if it's
charge. and then
2.5
you
or
get a
2.4,
percent.
2.6.
It's based on your contract, because look,
Yeah.
at gas stations,
Right.
they'll have two prices, one for cash, one for credit.
Mhm.
Because the
Yeah.
margins are low.
Christie,
Yeah.
previous treasurer, Christie, once negotiated and Drew, actually, I think a couple times, she renegotiated the contract. And if I'm not sure, I think you already did it once.
I think
with your
Brian did it
team.
before he left.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure, the fees that the town uses, I know that they use a municipal software for online payments that most likely the golf can't get on because it's like a bill payment
mhm.
type of program. But I mean, it's definitely worth looking into again. I just know that we've negotiated the fees in the past, and then right before Brian left, I believe, is when he just did that over the summer.
Right.
But I mean, we can look into it again and make sure.
I know that when you pay,
Absolutely.
when I pay the excise tax or whatever, the water bill online, it sends you to a different website. So I don't know if
Yes.
there's a separate vendor
Yeah,
that's involved, that's separate from the town,
yeah.
and that fee is applied to the vendor.
Mhm.
I'm not sure the specifics.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
We'd have to pull it up from the treasurer's
If- if,
record
you
to
know,
see what
if-
the contract states.
If we know, then maybe
town
we
doesn't
can-
make money off
Maybe we
of
can
that.
find a better vendor,
So
maybe we can do
it
something about it.
most likely does pay the vendor.
right, that's what I'm thinking.
But right now, they're paying the vendor
Yeah,
for any credit card charge, so.
Yeah, some vendor fees are gonna be different
Mhm.
amongst each other, because I process credit cards myself, and I just switched this past year because the fees I was getting charged, I'm like, this is insane. So I switched to a different company, and I'm saving a decent amount of money.
Yes.
with that.
Well, I think it's one of those things too, if you let it go in a number of years, they obviously are a business, they look to increase, so they bump it up 1/10% or whatever, however they do it, and then over the course of 5 to 6 years, you're paying a little bit more than you used to. If you're not paying attention, you just keep paying it.
Yeah.
But if we address it and we're proactive, we kind of dial it back every 5 or 3 to 5 years, so I mean, we have gone after it, but,
a lot of people are paying online pay services like PayPal, and they're getting away from credit cards and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know if that's something worth looking into, you know?
yeah, I'm not familiar with it with regards to the golf industry, but I could look into it.
I just did a little search here, and it says, states that make credit card surcharges illegal are, as of this, are the following, and we're one of them.
It's a pretty simple.
Thank you for the TV working.
Well, no, so the surcharge, you're
Anybody
saying
got
for
a
the town
address in the
online,
building
it's
over
going
there?
to the vendor. It doesn't go to the town.
Right.
The charge that would be, if you go to like our Unipay, I think it is. Yeah, any of the fees that are associated go to the vendor, not to the town. We don't get any money from that. We just get our bill paid.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at our expenses, with the exception of a couple, that's probably ranked number 6 or number 7th in the expense line across the entire budget.
So continuing down through the line items, we got a reduction in maintenance seed. And we had an increase in the insurance. That continually seems to be a challenge for us because, again, that's a cost out of our control, and we pay what we owe when it occurs. And then we have equipment leases from 11,700 to 15,000. So,
Well, in FY 2020, we didn't actually have any equipment lease. We weren't paying for any equipment this fiscal year. In FY 21, we will be purchasing one fairway mower that right out, so there won't be any financing involved in that. The $15,143 that you see there is the annual finance on a new rough mower. The new rough mower costs somewhere, I don't have the exact figure off the top of my head, but it's about $63,500. That's a 5-year lease with a $1 buyout at the end of the lease period for that particular piece of equipment. That's what the $15,143 is being spent on.
and to speak to that a little bit further, as I stated, we stopped doing the full fleet replacement on all the maintenance equipment, and we're kind of staggering out so that we're not stuck with that big lump sum all the time at the end of that contract or whenever it comes to that we need to replace it. So as we stagger it out, this is how we do it.
Well, it's
A piece or two at a time, and
Well, it's Rob Peter,
Clean
Paul.
house.
You take the $15,000 that you spend on that particular one piece of equipment, and you take the approximately $15,000 that your annual expense went up, you could probably do a 3/4 fleet replacement on a 5-year $1 buyout at about $40,000 to $42,000 lease payment on an annual basis. That's the trade-off. You know, you either pay more for older equipment that you keep, or you continue to go in a 4 or 5 year equipment purchasing program. and you keep mainstay items. Of course, you're not going to be replacing a 40 horsepower tractor every 5 years because you don't need to. Same thing with the backhoe, and the same thing with a sprayer, but something like a triplex or a piece of equipment that's used 7 days a week, those are the ones that you're going to want to replace quicker. So we have a bit of a trade-off. I mean, it looks better in one respect because you're not paying finance charges, but in the other respect, you're asking other equipment to perform significantly longer outside of its window. And a good reflection of that is that we have 2 pieces of equipment to trade in, which we're now going to be calling surplus, because none of the equipment vendors that we deal with want them. Their only option is, okay, we'll take it to auction. If we get something for it, we get $100 for driving it down there, you get the rest. They're just so old that they can't do anything with them. They have no value. So we're trying to sell them to someone else, or we put them as surplus and see how we can deal with them in that regard.
If you got an old horse on the farm and he's not producing, Mr. Howcroft, what are you doing? Put him to rest. So, and to offset the last page, a little bit of the last page anyways, you see the long-term debt and principal and interest. There's a swap in values on those 2 numbers. We reduced the capital projects number by $1,700 to offset the changes in those numbers. So, I mean, again, we try to counterbalance it and modify this budget to its specifics as we go through the years. We're pretty flexible with how we operate with regards to how the fiscal year goes. Obviously, if you get a poor season with inclement weather, they're not eating as much, they're not buying as much pro shop stuff, reduced staff needs. He does the same thing. I mean, he's a little more restricted because he has to produce the same product whether one person shows up or 300 people show up. My side kind of directly is impacted by the volume and the bodies that come through. So, but we do our best. I mean, if Steve could shave some time, we shave the time and make it happen. And that's the nature of business. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions.
There will probably be 1, possibly 2 articles that we ourselves can't come up with articles. I'm sure most of you know that Dana and I report to a committee. The committee discusses needs and wants and comes up with articles and then puts them together. So we wouldn't have anything.
We're just the idea guys
to comment on right now. But we do, I think one thing that would be just important to mention now, we're approximately, 60,000 ahead?
Yep. We've had
of our
a
forecast.
very successful season. Steve keeps the place in grade A condition. Customer service, quality of products, price points. People are satisfied with the product they're getting and the price they're paying. And we've had momentum for a while. And hopefully we can maintain it.
Well, as long as, what we try to do, as long as the people coming through the gate are happy, then we're
Doing our job.
one of the few entities in town that charges a fee and makes makes money. Obviously for itself and the contingency fund. The other thing to mention, I'm sure this committee probably knows, but our free, they don't call it free cash, do they, Julie?
Retained earnings.
What do they call it?
Retained earnings.
Retained earnings.
Yeah.
Semantics.
Same idea.
Wonderful thing. $399,000, I believe, is the number
we're
is
at.
there. So that, they used to call that contingency fund, right? Now
I think so.
it's not.
yeah.
It's not contingency anymore. It's retained.
It's a new world.
Whatever the difference is.
So we're holding our ground and we'll continue to do so. I mean, obviously, you guys know the stock market. It's in a good place. People feel good. They're playing golf. In 2009, they weren't so happy.
Thank God for Tiger Woods, huh? When he came back into play,
Yeah.
golf took off like crazy.
You'd be surprised how much of an impact he has.
Yeah, well, definitely, that's what
Tiger
I'm
wins
saying.
is
My son
significant.
works at Titleist, and he can tell you,
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
just sending golf balls out that door like crazy now. But otherwise, you two guys have done a heck of a job, a really good job.
Appreciate it. I mean,
Everybody compliments that course now.
I think
It's,
Steve's staff and my staff collectively have a passion
The only thing we need is,
to do right by
the
the
only thing we
town.
need is a clubhouse,
Facility,
a facility. Once that's done, that place will be
Well, you
cool.
know, maybe we should hold a golf outing and get everybody to attend and we'll start the kitty for the clubhouse.
How the fire department passed the boot.
We can
We need a
stand
big boot.
We get some big golf.
real big, we actually probably put
No,
a dump
the-
truck in the middle of
The
town.
course is really good shape.
We appreciate
What's your projected opening date?
Projected opening date, I'd like to say probably the fourth week in March, depending on how dry things get. Right now, I'm more concerned about being dry as opposed to, we've got a lot of rain, a really insignificant amount of frost in the ground. That's what I'd like to see. You know, so it's a little mushy. We did have, Mother Nature came through and helped us with our tree removal project there with about 8 or 9 trees, so we're in the process of. Unfortunately, it didn't drop the ones that I wanted to come down. It always drops the
You
ones
forgot to
that...
mark them, that's why.
Huh?
You forgot to mark them.
Well, I forgot to cut them down at the bottom before the wind blew, is what I forgot to do. But
So, are we on TV or we're not on TV?
yeah, you're on TV. If anybody, we do have for all Acushnet residents out there, I'm starting to stockpile a little bit of wood down by the shop.
Mother Nature.
By decree of the selectmen, any of the wood that I harvest there is free to Acushnet residents, so if
Come
you
on
happen
down
to
and
be
collect
by
it.
and you're looking for some, I've got a little bit down there, and hopefully I know in the next 2 or 3 weeks I'll probably have a little bit more.
Nice.
So,
Good.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you for
And I
your time,
agree,
ladies and
the
gentlemen, thank
feedback
you.
that I get
Appreciate
anyway
it.
from the people that I know, they enjoy the course. It's always top shelf, good condition. You guys put out a good product, and they feel welcome, so they return there and they have a good
That's awesome.
experience. So
yeah,
You
no,
guys
we
are
have
doing a
good-
great
we have
job.
good- We have a good clientele base, and hopefully with, we can build some more in the younger age groups. That's the only real difficult spot that golf has had as far as building attraction. But especially now too, not only with the men's but with the women's players taking off, especially the younger women players on the women's tour. We do get quite a bit of ladies playing too, and I would encourage, if there's any women out there who want to come work on the golf course. I've never had anybody come apply. I've had 2 girls come apply in the 19 years I've been there.
Wow.
So, more than happy, the women cut the straightest lines behind the walk mower on the greens than anybody, and they pay much more attention to detail.
Have you guys had success with that app that you guys developed, or you put the town on a couple of years back, where people want to...
Oh, Golf Now.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
That's been successful for you guys?
Absolutely. I mean, we get to capitalize on, the national advertising campaign that
You
they put
got
out
to
there
give
in
up some
every
tea
tournament.
times or something?
Acushnet alphabetically is at the top of the list. Usually, our price point, we're one of the low ball leaders in the market. So whichever way you scout, or or surf for a tee time, we're usually on the list. So yeah, we have seen an influx of customers that become regulars.
Excellent, good.
And we haven't seen too much cannibalism with regards to a regular customer that says, I'm not coming to paying rack rate, I'm gonna get the Golf Now time.
Yeah.
Once in a while you see one regular guy do it, but for the most part, it's bringing in new faces from different places. And my job is to get them on the course, because that product sells itself way better than anything that I can produce and put on TV. So if I can get them here in any way, shape, or form, once they play our track, I hear it 100 times a day. Wow, this is way better than I expected. I can't believe I haven't played this place before.
Yeah,
And
I've heard the
they
same
always
thing.
come back, every time.
Can we get the chief to play golf and recruit the firefighters? Got a
Yes.
whole group to go up there.
Hey, we get quite a few.
We have quite a few firefighters.
In Bedford, we have
Yeah.
New Bedford now.
They should challenge the fire
But
department.
where does,
New Bedford,
Gotta get the police
where does the
department
Fairhaven
on.
High
Challenge.
School golf team practice?
Excuse me?
Where does the Fairhaven High School golf, Fairhaven High
I'm
Golf?
not sure where
They go to
Fairhaven
Whaley.
is. They might go to the Whale. We have
They go
a
to
colony.
Whale.
Do they go to Whale or they go to, well, I don't know, they go to
I'm almost
CCND?
positive they go to the Whale.
Who do we
Yeah.
have? We have
We have
Old
Old
Colony,
Colony.
Tabor Academy.
Tabor
and,
Pace. Oh,
yeah,
colony.
there's-
Well, I'm thinking like, we send enough kids to Fairhaven High School.
Who's the other-
Uh, we-
We should get them to,
We did vote one year
Yeah, Vogue, yeah.
with Old Colony, and with the amount of practices that they have, plus matches in conjunction, in combination with our nightly leagues,
Yeah,
it
didn't
was
work. Okay.
tough
We
to
have
squeeze in.
leagues every afternoon, and they're what, 2:30 or 3 o'clock?
From, basically 2:30 to 5 o'clock, we'll put out as many people in that time span as we do for the whole morning.
Okay.
But those are 9-hole rounds versus 18-hole rounds. So it was tough. You're trying to, it's like air traffic control.
Yeah.
We can't cross the lanes because nobody's happy.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great presentation about it.
Expect to see all of you out playing golf in a couple months.
no.
Doesn't make a difference how good or how bad
Nope.
you are. We don't pay
We
attention.
see it all.
As long as you don't make divots.
My husband and son, yes. Me?
And moving right along, next item on the agenda is the planning department, Mr. Henry Young. Welcome, Mr. Young.
Hard to follow golf, free fire, but I'll try.
You got the master plan.
Thank you.
Rough area.
Good, thank you. I'll pass it over. I can't order that 4,500 for that piece.
If you don't mind. Another one. That's right. We've been around long enough, right? To see it come around again. I'm all set, thanks. All set?
All set.
Good evening, my name is Henry Young, Town Planner. Thanks for having me in tonight to talk about the 2021 budget for the Planning Board. I think you have the spreadsheet for the Planning Board budget. So we are level funded from last year with the single and notable exception of the master plan, which is what I wanted to talk to you about tonight for those who've been around long enough. We had this conversation in 2006 and 7 as we prepared the 2008 master plan. So it's time to cycle back through the development of the municipal master plan. So that's new for some of us, and I put together a PowerPoint. You have the lap brief that I wanted to take you folks through, but I don't know if this is going to be able to be recorded, but it's helpful for people who are sitting at home to begin to understand what the master plan is all about. So I'd like to take you through the master plan first, and then we'll circle back around to the budget spreadsheet. Okay, so the planning board, engages in day-to-day operations, permitting subdivisions, solar plans, Form As. We do that on a day-to-day basis, but one of the critical functions that planning boards engage in about every 10 years is the creation of a municipal master plan. So I wanted to take you through what the justification for a master plan is, what the master plan elements are. They're like chapters of a book, literally. And then end up with the master plan process overview, which spans a 2-year period, which I'll show in the schedule. And then I wanted to outline who is involved in the master plan development. It's a series of 7 committees and a steering committee. And then I'll finish up with the scope of work, essentially an overview of the scope of work that justifies the expense on the spreadsheet that you have before you. Okay, so justification for planning in general, but the development of a master plan, is that communities are always changing. We're sort of in a place, Acushnet is somewhat of in a place that's very vulnerable, and it's going to be vulnerable to growth. So knowing that Acushnet is going to grow, the question is, to what extent do we want to manage that growth? And the document that helps communities manage that growth over the long period is a master plan. Some catalysts that lead to that growth and change would include changing demographics. I'll be talking about the demographics of the town, but essentially we're getting a little older and a little bit more affluent in this community as you contrast Acushnet today to where we were in 2006 when we last did this. We're seeing continued pressure on open space, which threatens what we came to call the town and country atmosphere of Acushnet, which we like and want to protect. You know that there's a chronic, unmet demand for affordable and senior housing in Acushnet. As we look ahead, especially when you think about extension of sewer and the available land that we have, there's going to be, I think, inevitably a demand for condominiums and something called cluster development. For a number of reasons, including just background population growth, but more acutely from MBTA expansion into the South Coast. We should expect to see increased traffic congestion through the downtown in the next 10 years, which means that we need to take action now to begin to address that. Acushnet has a nitrogen loading issue, mostly from our septic systems. We hear about that all the time. And it's mostly, driven by the fact that we're all on septic systems, but we're kind of moving in the right direction now with the completion of the CWMP, Comprehensive Waste Management Plan, and we're beginning to look at the phasing of sewer throughout the town, which leads into the public facilities. As I look out 10 years from now, I think there are going to be two really significant areas of infrastructure we're going to have to address. Sewer obviously is one, but another is going to be the transportation infrastructure, roads and bridges in the town. As a result of things like sewer and increased demand and pressure on demand for development and pressure on open space, we are going to have to, and we continually do, look at how we zone the town, create different zoning districts to allow different uses throughout the town. Finally, two things. Without a master plan, it places a pretty significant barrier to capturing grant funding. One of the blocks that you always have to check when you're applying for large grants, state or federal, is do you have a master plan? Do you actively use it? So we're getting to the end state of use for the 2008 master plan, so again, time to redo. Finally, I'll just end with a note on climate change. Many of you might have seen the presentation I made to the Board of Selectmen for the MVP grant, Municipal Vulnerability Program grant, which we won, $15,000 grant, to begin to think about what would the impact of climate change have on municipal infrastructure in towns like Acushnet. We're a coastal community, so we are, I think, not immune from the changes in the climate. Sea levels, we can expect sea levels to be rising. It'll probably be more insidious, you're not going to see 3 feet in a year, but when you have a change of a couple of inches over 10 years, that can become significant. One place that I always point to, because everybody likes to talk about climate change and sea level rise, but there are many other places where this begins to show, climate change begins to show its face. And if you think back to last summer, you think about the triple E, problems that we were facing in town. Our winters are becoming warmer, and mosquitoes are able to survive more than they used to be able to through the winter. So as more survive, we see greater populations of mosquitoes, and then we see problems with mosquito-borne illnesses. So climate change is something that we have to confront as a community. It's not a debate on what causes it, it's just we perceive that it's occurring and we need to be thinking about it. An appropriate place to begin to address that is the master plan. Okay, so these are some of the catalysts behind and justifications for long-term planning. Just throwing out a cliche, towns don't plan to fail, but they often fail to plan. We don't want to be in that category. Right? Okay, so Mass General Law weighs in on this. This is their definition of a master plan. Statement through text, maps, illustrations, and other forms of communication designed to provide a basis for decision-making regarding the long-term physical development of a municipality. When we're done, and this is a 2-year process, this is what the master plan looks like. It's a document that is essentially the playbook for a community in the long run. And as important as the document is, it's the process behind the creation of the document which is really relevant. We have had as communities go, Acushnet has had a very successful experience with master planning over the past 10 years. I began to just make a list of the recommendations in the 2008 master plan, and I'll just read a few of them to you. Think about this. This is what we were projecting to occur in 2008. Relocation of the library to a reconstructed Howard School. Done. All right. Reconstruction of the Parting Ways campus. Do you remember when there used to be a big giant parking lot here? There was no green space. Okay, that was all changed. We also sought to acquire open space. So think about La Palm property, the Keene Road property, Hamlin Street property, Keating Woods, Acushnet, River Reserve properties. That is a result of us engaging with, tapping into our CPC, leveraging really Buzzards Bay for funding, and acquiring that property that is then forever green, and we're not even responsible for the stewardship. Buzzards Bay is. We hold the conservation restriction. That's a very efficient solution to the demand back in 2008 to begin to acquire more and preserve more open green space. We also sought in 2008 to begin to pay more attention to sustainable and energy efficient infrastructure. And as a result, as the chief was mentioning earlier, we put solar panels on the fire station number 1. We've insulated buildings, we've changed out lighting in buildings, we've put in new heating systems in buildings, which is a great investment in the future. There's a great return on investment, and especially because we became a green community, we were able to tap into a lot of grant opportunities to subsidize those investments. We also called for a lot of rezoning in town. This was the first master plan since 1964. So essentially, we didn't really have realistic zoning. So the whole town was essentially zoned residential, which includes the Titleist property, the quarry, and downtown and out on Quaker Lane. It was all zoned RA, residential. So we have done a lot of rezoning in town. We've created 2 industrial districts. We've created a business village district down here in the town where there's sewer, which enabled small lot development. We zoned 2 business commercial districts out on Nye Lane and the Titleist property, and as a result, there was investment right after that rezoning occurred. Titleist within months, because think of it, it was zoned residential. So who wanted to buy that as a residential property? By rezoning it, we created the opportunity for investment, and it happened. We also aggressively engaged in solar farms. So we created a bylaw that I think smartly regulated and control the creation of solar farms in town. To date, we've permitted 7. As I speak right now, we have 5 in the queue, which will be coming through the planning board in the next 3 months. That's a very passive, quiet land use that generates a revenue source for the solar cap fund, which the chief was talking about, which pays for a lot of things that you have become aware of. We call for the completion of the comprehensive waste management plan, which was just completed recently, right? So that's going to set the stage for future expansion of the sewer system, the municipal sewer system. There was a moratorium on expansion in 2006 until we got that done. That was just completed this past year, right? So some of these projects that we engage in the master plan take a long time. We're not talking necessarily about next year. We're talking about many years down the road. Park enhancements, new police station, restoration of herring runs on the Acushnet River, creation of the Acushnet River Historical District. The list kind of goes on and on. We have done a lot, okay? And it's all, if you would have read this in 2008, you could have seen where we were going. And the reason I think that this was so successful compared to other communities where this just sits on a shelf and gathers dust is because we had a very robust public process. And some of you here, I know, were part of that. And we will kind of recreate that experience again in the next 2 years. So that's sort of the backdrop, okay? This master plan has 7 chapters, which are highlighted in red there. Sorry, 8, including the goals. So these are aspects of the community that we take a deep dive into and think about, land use in Acushnet for the next 10 to 20 years. What do we need to be doing now to make sure we're where we want to be 10 to 20 years from now? And we do that in each of these aspects. But we also have to, once you do that deep dive, then you have to understand there's a relationship between each of these aspects. So you play a little 3-dimensional chess as part of this process. And as an example, blue is something we might do, right? Phase 1 sewer expansion. So that's a public facility, endeavor. But if you do that, it's like toothpaste. You squeeze on it over here, something happens over there. As a result of that, that's going to want to cause zoning for small lots, right? The reason we have 60,000 square foot minimum lot size out in the country is because everybody's on septic. But when you get into a place where there's sewage, you can drop down to 10,000 square feet. That's common in town. So the sewer will lead to a demand for small lot development or high density housing. So that's what happens. Sewer is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you build it wherever you put it, you're going to get a higher density of housing there. You should. That's why you build it. Now that's something that we would do internally. Let's expand the sewer and here's what's going to happen. Something could happen externally too. We know in the next 10 years, probably within the next couple of years, MBTA will start service all the way down to New Bedford with the station at Kings Highway. When that happens, everything changes around here in a very, very big way. This is what happens when the MBTA expands into the hinterlands. And we're a very desirable hinterland because of our location near the coast, near New Bedford. So what we can expect is there'll be an increased demand for housing down here because we have a great quality of life, land costs are low, etc. So that's going to increase land development. So we need to get out ahead of that in terms of zoning. But we also need to be thinking about things like traffic congestion. Again, when Kings Highway, just down the road here, goes into service, everybody from that direction is going to be trying to take the shortcut through the back roads, which is our main street of Acushnet, and heading over, to Kings Highway from here. So we should expect to see traffic build here during the peak periods, morning and afternoon. So we need to start thinking about that. Okay, so You understand we have, the multiple chapters, this is the book, this is the master plan. I want to quickly take you through each chapter, just one slide per chapter. Try not to be long. Okay, as far as land use, what do we need to be thinking about? Southeastern Massachusetts is one of the fastest growing parts of the state, and I see that it will continue to be one of the fastest growing areas. And here in Acushnet, we're desirable, okay, we've got sewer availability, and we're going to be expanding that sewer. The MBT, sorry about that, MBTA is going to be expanding here. We have low land costs, and the quality of life factors are great. We have great schools, for instance. If you're a young family and you're working somewhere between here and Boston, you can take the train. This is a great place to live. Okay, so people will begin to move here when they know they can catch a train 2 miles down the road and head into Boston. So if that happened, then what we can do is we can look at our zoning, look at the town. This is a map of zoning, and everything that you see here that's white is 60,000 square foot lot size residential development. That's what we encourage. On a long enough timeline, that's what Acushnet becomes. A subdivision of 60,000 square foot lots. Is that what we want? This is the kind of question that we need to ask in the master plan process. Is that what we want, or do we want to look at parts of town and say, this part of town needs to be preserved as more for open space, agricultural purposes? Well, you can't do that with 60,000 square foot lot sizes. You have to increase your lot size. There has to be some kind of a governor on the rate and type of development. So we address that in the land use, committee. This growth is a threat to a lot of things that we enjoy here, which I've bulletized, that town and country feel, high water quality, drinking water quality, relatively low taxes, very low crime, and just a good overall environment. We're talking about golf courses here. That's just, you drive down, in what place can you drive down the road, in 10 minutes from any house in Acushnet and be on a great golf course? The quality of life and the environment here is just fantastic, which means we're a desirable community. As far as housing goes, specifically looking at housing, we have about 37 housing units in town right now. The majority are single family, about 14% are multifamily. Median house price right now is about $280,000. This is slightly dated, but that's a 12% increase from when we did our last master plan. Okay, so our housing costs are going up. Median family income is $80,000. That's 33% higher than when we did the master plan in 2006 and 7. Still, like 10, 15 years ago, we're only at about 2% affordable housing, which means that we're vulnerable to something called 40B, if you're familiar with that at all. 40B is a law that says if your community is under 10%, which we're way under that, then developers can come in and to a great extent supersede our zoning and build affordable housing. So there are ways to protect yourself against that, and it's really not that you're trying to be exclusive, but to manage that kind of growth and get out in front of it. So we'll be talking about that. We have a chronic lack of senior housing. The list, the waiting list to get into Presidential Terrace is very long. So our housing community, each one of these chapters has a committee. The housing committee will just focus on these strategies to address, the housing needs across the whole socioeconomic spectrum of Acushnet and provide recommendations. Natural and cultural resources, I've listed some here, and bottom line, the Natural and Cultural and Resources Committee developed strategies that find balances between protection of flora and fauna, wildlife and plant life, and the need for development, whether that's industrial, commercial, or residential. It also has to find that balance, and we've wrestled with this, the balance between sustainable protection and preservation of historic sites. We, in many ways, want to preserve every historic site that we can, but that comes at a cost. So we have to find that balance of what can we afford, afford to acquire and preserve. Public facilities and services. We have, pretty extensive services here, and a very good level of service. But as we experience growth, there's going to be more and more demand placed on that. And there are other, underlying issues at play, like the cost of trash collection is going up. So, how do we deal with that? So the Public Facilities and Services Committee has to wrestle with, what does the DPW, what does the police chief want, EMS want, senior services, what do they want, and how much can we afford given the revenue streams that, that we have. So, you can think of them coming up with prioritized lists, of things that we need to focus on in terms of public services. As far as transportation is concerned, to me, this is a very big issue. I mentioned this, I think, twice already. And that is with the MBTA coming and a lot of traffic coming through the downtown, we need to think about how we can create what we have called in the planning department, a bypass road. So this is South Main Street, and here's Main. So we are right here. Everybody follow that?
You're not showing up there.
Okay. Sorry. Here's South Main Street. Right. And here's Titleist. Okay. So the quarry is right here. All right. So and the Century House is here. Is everybody located now? Okay. So there's a lot of open space back here. All right. So the discussion that's been going on for several years now is to put in a bypass road that would redirect traffic that's wants
How are you
to.
gonna take that land?
I'll hold that. Great question.
Damn right it is.
Yeah, I don't want to take it as a short answer. I mean, the town. I don't recommend that the town take it, and I don't think we need to take it.
I don't think you're gonna get it anyway.
I don't think that's the approach. So here, if traffic is coming from Fairhaven, from Mattapoisett, through town, causing a lot of congestion in our downtown area, if we can move them on the bypass road, River Road, and then, off to Kings Highway, that removes a lot of congestion from downtown. What it also does, and this begins to get to the answer to your question, we rezone this land business commercial with intent. The idea is if you put a bypass road in here, you're also opening up this land to development. So by putting in this road, you're increasing significantly the value of this property for business commercial development. Right now it's zoned for business commercial, but there's no access to the site. So we don't need the property, we just need agreements with the three property owners. Will you let us build a road? In return, you get the opportunity to develop that property. So I think that there's a compromise in there somewhere. There's a deal that can be struck. We should at least address it because we know that there's a problem and this is a potential solution. So
we looked into environmental impact in the sense of the, you talked about climate change,
yes,
the effects of climate change, wildlife preservation, and there's some very vulnerable wetlands there, on the right side of that proposed
right.
bypass, and how does it affect that, that little area, in the sense also with rising water, where you talked about climate change and
right.
so forth, how in turn it impact that area and also have further impact upon the whole area.
So Mr. Howcroft and I did not practice this before, but here's the answer. The shape of this road reflects exactly what you're talking about. You wonder, why isn't this a straight road? This is mirroring the wetland setback requirements for that for those wetlands that exist here. So you can't build too close to the water, there has to be an offset. So in terms of rising sea levels, one thing you'd have to make sure of is that you almost need to build like a small-scale seawall, if you will, on the southwest side of this road, if you were thinking well into the future. And you'd have to make sure that because this is low land, you have to pay particular attention to the stormwater runoff, and make sure that you have good culverts so you don't get damming here. One of the predicted impacts of climate change is that we will have drier summers and wetter springs. So more like drought conditions in the summer, but in the spring, more torrential rain. So the problem that we face, besides any sea level rise, is a lot more stormwater runoff than we're used to. But we consider to be a 5-year storm today might be, in reality, a 10-year storm, statistical, stronger storms.
And also, would a study as far as a soil analysis, as far as PCB and what will be disturbed in that whole area with a change?
Yeah. The Army Corps has done a significant study along the waterfront.
Yeah.
And
I know we're getting off on them.
I know, but these are the conversations that will occur within the, if you and I are on the transportation committee, this is the conversation we're having, by the way, just to get a sort of forward look. We have soil data, we have Army Corps environmental data, and we have wetland mapping data for this area.
Is that floodplain, flood zone?
Yes, down through here, there's a flood zone. And that we've already mapped that out. Did I answer your question? Or not?
Oh.
What?
No, I don't think it's a good idea myself.
Please join the transportation committee.
Yeah.
I don't. One of the biggest things I think is take the traffic from Keating is to come off the road that they had built there while they were building the highway, and nobody wants to
Back towards
back
240?
So instead of having all the trucks come up and down Main Street,
Right.
100 miles an hour,
Right.
and then they had that road, it was a dirt road.
Yep.
That they made it.
So
Now they say there was a birds over there was a turtle, there was wetlands and all this stuff. Then the final thing was, I believe they said that they didn't want to make an exit or entrance for a private company.
Right.
But that would take just about 100% of the truck traffic
Right.
out of and that's the biggest problem on Main Street is the trucks.
No, I agree.
Because you have, like now, you have that sweeper up and down the thing there.
Right.
And especially they come through there at noontime.
Yep.
When all the traffic, people are going back and forth to lunch. And this guy's going 10 miles an hour and people are passing them left and right. Somebody got to kill on the highway.
Right.
That would eliminate all that if they had built that road back there.
No, it's true that there is a lot of wetland back there. And, we looked at it, pretty seriously in the last master plan. And I forget the gentleman who owned the farm back there on the Fairhaven side, who was interested in it, but then he passed. And there were, then it became complicated. There are a lot of wetlands back there. It would be a challenge.
It wasn't a challenge when they were building the highway though.
That was in a different era.
Oh.
In an era of environmental impact statements. I mean, when you look at Route 8, this is going off on a tangent. When you look at Route 18 in New Bedford when it was built, you could never do that in 2020. I mean, they leveled, that looked like London in World War II, what they did to New Bedford. You could never get away with that.
Oh, that was crazy.
And you could never go through, in the same way you can't go through wetlands like you could back in the 60s and 70s. The laws just have done a 180. But these are the conversations that we have to have. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it shouldn't be
No. The
pursued.
other reason I bring that up is because I live off of South Main Street.
Yep.
And I have to live with this thing every day. The traffic is ridiculous, and most of it's all trucks and you know, in and out of the quarry all day long.
Right.
And all night long now, in the summertime, it's 24 hours a day.
Well, half of that equation, this bypass road is also intended to be the heavy haul road. So traffic heading back into town wouldn't be permitted.
Well, you would have all the trucks now. If you're gonna have fancy restaurants and little shopping plazas, you're gonna have all these big tractors and trailers flying through there with all the dust and dirt that they make on Main Street.
Right.
Going by there.
Yeah, well, and that would drive what kind of development we would put in here. I don't know if this would be fancy restaurants or would it be,
Any place,
more
I mean,
industrial. Who
any
knows?
place, with all of if they create the dust and dirt that they're making on Main Street, all through there, you'd be in a problem.
Right. I'm not opposed to relooking at the connection, not just here, but all the way back to 240.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I think that's certainly can be part of the discussion of in the transportation committee's work. Don't take anything I say here as this is what we're going to talk about. These are examples of the things that we would be talking about. Let's see, as far as economic, we spent a lot of time in the Economic Development Committee in 2006 looking at attracting and retaining businesses. And we've had some, I think, really good success there through rezoning. The picture you see there is J&R Plastics, and that addition was absolutely facilitated by the creation of the business commercial district out there. They were sort of hemmed in by RA district zoning requirements. And the same, as I already mentioned before, rezoning title has opened that completely up to redevelopment. As far as open space and recreation is concerned, that's one of, when we get into the master plan conversation, we have public hearings, I guarantee you're going to hear that one of the most cherished aspects of Acushnet is its open space. We don't talk about it a lot because we take it for granted, but when you start thinking about development and you see what happens to communities who don't plan properly, it's gone. All of a sudden, it's one farm here, it's one farm there, and before you know it, Acushnet isn't what you remember it as when you were young, and it can't be taken back. So this becomes a pretty emotional discussion in the master plan process. The open space, the recreational part is much more fun. We're beginning to have that conversation here. With the golf course, that is a fantastic asset. We mentioned, this is the kind of thing that we would talk about in the Open Space Recreation Committee. We know that clubhouse is functional, but it really needs to grow. And the place to have the discussion of what needs to happen to the golf course and its clubhouse over the next 10 years is in the master plan process. You build that into the master plan, and now it's memorialized in an official municipal document. And then you go chasing grant funds, which are available for projects like that. So it's just a way to help you talk about it, you memorialize it, it becomes official, and then you use that to help subsidize the project. Other communities do it. We shouldn't exclude ourselves from that benefit. So that was a quick run through the chapters, and then I just want to give you an overview of what the planning process looks like for those of you who do a lot of planning in your lives. I don't mean to insult anybody's intelligence, but this is kind of how the process works. When I have this in a more public setting, I start out the conversation by saying, personalize planning. If you felt that you were personally in some kind of a rut, you would express that. I feel like I'm in a rut. I really need to change my life. I need to have a more fulfilling life. So when you do that, when you say that, you don't go out the door in the morning and say, "See you later. I'm going to have a more fulfilling life." That's not actionable. What does that mean? You have to figure out what it means to have a more fulfilling life. whether it's I need to spend more time with my family, get more exercise, more proper, a better diet. You need to have these like goal areas that you want to improve upon, and that leads to more and more defined action, like I'm going to run 2 miles every day, right? So when you start doing those things, counting your calories, running 2 miles a day, volunteering with the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, things like that, that's been planned. And now you're executing that plan, and lo and behold, you start having a more fulfilling life. Communities do the same thing. Communities say, we love our town, and we want it to be better and sustainable for the next 20 years. So what do we need to do? We can't just walk outside and say, I want Acushnet to be great for the next 20 years. You have to have a plan. And the aspects are not exercise and diet and spending more time with family. The aspects are land use, housing, natural and cultural resources, etc. Right? Those are the focus areas that municipalities look at when they're thinking about what they want to be in the future. So that's why we have committees set up to take deep dives into those aspect areas. At the end of the day, those steering committees will come up with goals and objectives, things we can do, and it gets really detailed towards the end where it's, what department's going to do what, when, who's responsible. You start creating accountability for getting these things done. That's what we did the last time, and that's why I can, rattle off a huge list of accomplishments in this town, because we went through this process. In general, you go, as you move from left to right, you're going from the very general broad statement to very specific actions. So this is the work of the steering committee and all the individual committees which will be created over each of those goal areas. This part constitutes the plans. This is it. Okay? And then the end of every chapter, there's the to-do list. All right? The to-do list, which gets implemented. Who's doing what, where, when, and how is that going to get done? And that results in, and you'll see it play out, that results in capital expenditure, restructuring of government, like EMS and fire used to be separate and then they were consolidated, things like that. Establishing departmental priorities, changing zoning ordinances, and so forth. Okay, so at the end of this process, a giant to-do list is created that addresses each of those areas and also understands the relationship between each of those areas. That's a restatement of what I just said. Here's the schedule. So it is February 2020. The planning board expects to kick off the master plan process right after town meeting, start July 1st. And phase 1 will be in the first year. We establish some committees. We stand up especially the steering committee and the land use committee, that's sort of like the nucleus of the master plan, the land use committee. And we'll also get at the housing. We'll begin to look at housing elements. There's a lot of data collection that goes on. The timing, like why did we pick this year to start the master plan process? In March of 21, right here, we're going to get, that's about right here. In March of 21, we get all the 2020 census data, which drives helps us make informed decisions, data-supported decisions. So that data release happens right here, perfect timing. We understand what we want to do with the community as far as land use is concerned. We get hit with that data, and then we're into the other major chapters of the master plan. So that happens in year 2. And then 22 is when we'll have the 2022 master plan. All right. That 2-year process goes very quickly. I expect that you will all be participating and somehow you'll want to. This is a huge legacy document that you want to, you get such a good look at the finances, more than anybody else in town, that you will you will want to participate in this. It's very exciting to see how it all plays out. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're building the playbook, right? That, when we're done, and it's not the planning board facilitates this, I'll author this, but at the end of the day, we give this out to the Board of Selectmen, all the departments. This is the playbook. You read through this from 2008, you're like, there are those projects that we talked about. So it's something you really want to get behind. So this is the committee structure. There's a steering committee, which is the chair of each of the other committees. Okay, and then that is supplemented by a regional planning agency, SERPED, if you're familiar with them. That's Southeast Regional Planning and Economic Development District. They're sort of the regional planning agency. A lot of volunteers from, the citizenry of town. Colleges and universities always want to send interns to help out. We like that. And then we can bring in subject matter experts, to speak on anything from, climate change to traffic counting and transportation planning to, you name it. All right, so we bring in a lot of resources to help us as we do this. As far as like the scope of work, what are the tasks to get this all done? A lot of data collection, we create a lot of surveys, there's a lot of analysis and report writing. We stand up and operate these 8 committees. The last time we did this, for each of the 8 committees, we'd have at least 4 meetings, so that's 32 meetings that are held. And then the outcomes of that, each committee generates a report, which gets translated into a chapter in the master plan. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen with SERPED, but also externally with Buzzards Bay, Housing and Urban Development, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, and then a lot of coordination with internal departments within the municipal government. We'll have at least 2 major workshops, and that would be held at the school, in the gym, like when we have at the same place that we have a town meeting. Big crowds come out for this. We had about 200 people, I would say, at our kickoff meeting for the master plan the last time. There's a lot of external communication that happens, whether it's on our website now or in the paper, a lot of map generation, synthesis of all the above, which has to be plugged into with one voice into this document. Okay, and all this is the responsibility of the planning board. So that's sort of the overview of the master plan. I would say, to contrast it to, the earlier presentations, we're talking about, the day-to-day operations. This is where we as a town take a, 10,000-foot view and a very long view of Acushnet, where it is today, where we want it to be 10 to 20 years from now. It's a monumental task, but it's one of the most rewarding things I've been involved in the town. Any questions?
I just got one quick question.
Yeah.
In the discussion about the expectation of increased housing, residents in the master plan, do you foresee or expect a capital project like a high school or something worked into?
We will talk about schools. We did last time, and of course, that's a major public facility. So the Public Facilities and Services Committee would examine that. When we ended our conversation the last time, we thought that Acushnet was in a pretty good position. We have an excellent elementary school and an excellent middle school. The downside is we don't have a high school, and a lot of communities like to, you almost rally around your high school. We don't have that. So that's a downside. But on the upside, somebody who's coming out of 8th grade has multiple really good options to choose from, whether they want to go to, Old Colony, whether they want to go to Bristol County Ag, whether they want to go to Fairhaven. They have a lot of options that, are pretty attractive. So the question is, do you want to in some way sacrifice those options by having a high school, which school's very expensive. You're the budget people, you know that,
Right.
these are big ticket items, so you have to watch what you wish for. But that is going to be a conversation. If we predict, we will look at other communities that the MBTA has come to, like us, and see what their rate of growth is. And does that committee feel like we'd be crossing a threshold where it would be optimum to build a high school, or from many aspects, is it a better idea to keep the good deal that we have right now?
Status quo, right.
I got a question, yeah. I'm just curious as to how you derive the $27,000 to budget request, because it's a giant project, it seems, certainly an important project. How do you derive it? Is it realistic?
Yes. So is everybody on the spreadsheet, so we're coming back to that. So the way that I came into Acushnet in 2006 was as the master planner. That was my job. I have a background in municipal planning. And at that time, we looked around at the cost of hiring a consultant to do the work or doing the work in-house. We decided to do the work in-house. I try to be objective in this conversation because I was the one doing the work, but it was, I think, a really good decision. Because a lot of consulting firms come in and they do a master plan, and they're doing 10 of them, and as soon as they're done, they walk away.
That's right.
Right? To a great degree, I was accountable for the execution of what was written. I own that. And I know everybody that was involved, so we can have good, conversations about, remember what we said? We're sticking to it. So anyway, at the time, the cost of hiring a consultant was, $60,000, $70,000. So if you go back to the 2006-07 budget, we said $30,000 over 2 years to get this done. It's a big piece of work, but I committed to it. So that was my starting point in conversations with Mark Senarizio, chairman of the planning board. If you were going to pay for this on the outside, the prices have gone up since then. But at the same time, I know the community really well. I wrote the master plan the last time, so there's an efficiency that we can gain there. So we agreed, I'm going to lop off 10% of that 30,000. I think that can be, we're going to gain some efficiencies. So I've done this before. It's not my first rodeo. I commit to the town to do it for that. Does that answer your question?
It answers my question. I mean, honestly, yeah, it just seemed like a very low amount. I'm not knowing the history of how it was done before that. I'm new to the board, but that's, it just looked like, what do we, it could be a lot more to it.
I've always tried to keep expenses in the planning board low. And for those of you who've been around, you know that I've always tried to, be as efficient as possible, and we have, our rate of growth is very small.
It sounds like a tremendous return on investment.
I think it is.
So,
But I want to, I want to provide value, to, as an employee. And I think I'm not going to do it by myself. There are a lot of people, who are going to be contributing to this. But I'm not a greedy person, right? It's a very rewarding experience.
Just to key in on that too, from an outside agency, when I first reached out to Starfed about the master plan, they said that typically a master plan can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $130,000.
Right.
So this is very much in line on the lower end of that spectrum. And that's, for really, really tiny towns, depending on what you're looking for to in your master plan, would be that low end. And then bigger towns, more in depth, would be up to 130 is what they typically see for costs.
Could this generate articles,
What?
budget articles? You expect, I'm just wondering, the master plan, do you expect that this over the next 2 years, you'll submit articles at the?
So there, I think that I would leave that up to the FinCom and to the Board of Selectmen or whoever, how that gets coordinated, but it would generate a 2-year increase in my salary and then it goes away.
I understand that, I was
sunset.
just wondering,
It could be-
experts bringing in consultants or whatever, would that fall under?
Yes,
Articles?
if we hired a consultant, if we went outside for this, you would hire a consultant and there'd be an article.
No, right, we're gonna keep it in-house, but I thought
Right.
you had up there bringing in experts as needed.
That's because those are I have a network
Okay.
of people that I will
Yep.
be bringing in.
Okay.
And I'll also be, we just received a $15,000 municipal vulnerability planning grant. And we're hiring Serpent.
Yeah.
And they're going to be doing an climate environmental study of Acushnet. A lot of that data is going to feed into the master plan. I'm seeking another DLTA grant
Yeah.
from Serpent, and they will help with some of the data collection and analysis. So,
Sure.
I'm orchestrating as much as I am working.
So the DLTA has grants that will help with master planning as well,
Right.
and community compact. So those might not be until next, like the
next
fall-
cycle,
Yeah,
right.
like theirs are usually calendar year, so January of next year, it seems like we would be able to apply ahead of January and find out if we get it in January. But like Henry said, this is a 2-year plan, so anything that we would get for grants, anything that he would be looking for most likely wouldn't be until next year for articles, but hopefully at that point we would find out that we got grants to cover it.
Just thinking back, when we did the statistics as far as the population and the student growth, well, I guess we overestimated.
Right.
And, but the positive was, we used those figures in planning the new school. So therefore, in one sense, we overbuilt. But in overbuilding, we in turn saved a lot of money, taxpayers' money, because some programs were put in, such as special ed, our own special ed, rather than outsourcing those services to other communities for our kids, or to private agencies. So actually, it was really a cost-saving and more efficient educational delivery of services. So, but I remember we thought, there'd be a lot of children coming.
Yes.
But what's happened was the family structures changed, especially during, in the recession.
Right.
And some families having less and less children, and that trend continues, but we don't know when it's gonna end.
Right.
Especially if we get student relief, and that sort of stuff, on the loans and stuff, that families can do some better planning rather than pay bills. But that's another side. I've been seeing a lot of studies, plans, and one thing about having some of these companies that come in and do them, many times, it's my opinion, that they sometimes just take the document, change the names, change some stats, and you've got a basic document that they've used for another community, and it's all in one, So what we'll have is one geared to generically for this town. So I don't know if you agree with me on that, but
No, I was just looking at the 2010, and then there's an interim population statistic that shows just what you're talking about. After 2008, the population trend was depressed. So we're short.
we may want to reverse that in some way. We can't, but I mean.
We don't know what,
But because, town, declining number of children becomes a dying town, so to speak, so.
Train could bring more.
yep, exactly.
Yeah,
And
just
younger
that
people.
issue.
Younger families.
Younger people with, I mean, when if I was 20-something and in a young family, and there's a train going from Boston to Boston from Kings Highway, and I look at the schools here and this community here, and you got the, Ocean and New Bedford and the Cape and a train to Boston, and this is a great place to live. So
$3,800 for a studio in Boston.
right. So I can see a lot of, pressure, which would be good, and that's going to repopulate the schools.
No one's really written a good history of Acushnet, but we had that train station. There was a train station there one time called the Acushnet a train station, and that had a major, in my estimation, a major economic impact on the commercial activity and basically in the downtown Acushnet area, because Pocket Hill Road was the area where people went to the train station, bought their goods, and it was transported back and forth. So, but I don't hear, why don't they resurrect the name Acushnet Station? Because that's right where the Burger King was, because I remember when I was a kid, it was there. So,
It's still time to put a campaign together.
Anyway,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Henry, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it, very informative, and I look forward to working with you on the next one as we did the last one. I thought it
Writing your
was a
name
very
down.
rewarding experience.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Absolutely.
It's-
I have one
Love
quick question for
volunteers.
Henry before he goes. When will we get the results of the comprehensive waste management plan?
So that's a DPW document. And
That was already filed, the CWMP?
Yeah, we have all the results on that, the final results?
It was filed, yeah. Yeah, it's a huge document.
Have we gotten those from Dan, or?
We haven't got the
Yeah,
document.
we haven't.
Right. So I
It's very
think that's
thin.
ready for publication and distribution.
Yeah, I know that it had to go through a review period for a while with all the different companies that care to view CWMP plans. And I believe it was just recently, maybe last week, that the review period ended, so we were able to post it as a final
Release the
document.
info.
Yeah, so,
But, you asked about that. That's one of the largest driving forces for growth in this town. When you build sewer,
'Cause
development
everything's gonna
occurs
revolve around
around
You
it.
build it big.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A lot of contingencies on that.
Which has been a governor for growth in this town, I think, or I know that it has been a governor for higher density development. So that changes, wherever you put that sewer, you'll see when you read it, there's a phase, it's all broken up into like phased areas. Phase 1 is South Main Street, Phase 2 is, off Middle Road. Wherever we decide as a community to extend the sewer, that's where the growth is going to occur. So that has to be a very thoughtful process.
Are they planning any kind of a sewer treatment plant? Or are we just gonna continue working with New Bedford?
No, I mean, that is a conversation that should come up in the in the master plan process.
They're beating the heck out of us, New Bedford.
Right. So,
And they don't take care of our water lines or
Right.
anything, and we pay more than the town of New Bedford does.
right.
But Bill, what the cost factors
Oh, yeah.
would be on
It's,
that'd be expensive.
Well, no, I'm just wondering if,
You know,
you have to mortgage your house.
That's what he did.
you just do a cost benefit analysis and, and you determine whether it's a good idea or not.
Yeah, well, that's what that is, it's part of the planning,
Right.
you know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henry.
Thank you.
Very informative, thank you. Next, old business, new business, town administrator.
Hey, Henry, you leaving? I'll talk to you in a second.
Sure, absolutely.
Do you have anything for us?
I don't think so. Old business?
All right, the next item is the approval of the minutes for February 5, 2020. Absent was Mr. Howcroft.
Make a motion.
Make a motion.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. And the next meeting, we're not meeting next week.
No.
It's the 19th. We'll be meeting the week after.
26.
And who do we have, Kathy?
This old column.
Some of these have moved around.
You still got the town clerk too? She rescheduled.
Yeah, she was rescheduled.
Old column.
Whole colony? Is that the only one?
Yeah, I've got the budget, I can discuss that if you want, you know,
Sounds good. Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.